The cadets of Station Vorex 9 whispered about the apex chamber, the way soldiers whispered about ghosts, as if speaking too loud might summon the thing that killed you. It sat at the end of Corridor Theta, sealed behind layers of outdated warning signs and dust-lined security rails. Red holograms floated across its door. Gravity hazard, access restricted. Beneath them, smaller text flickered in half-dead projectors. 17 fatalities recorded. No survivors. Lieutenant Mira Hale read those lines twice, lips curling in a small private smile. To her, the chamber wasn't a tomb. It was an invitation. She waited until curfew settled over the academy, corridors dimming to cold blue, ventilation fans humming like distant waves. From the observation balcony, she could see the neutron star beyond the viewport, its faint light pulsing through radiation filters. The gravity wells of dying suns always fascinated her. Something about weight and inevitability felt honest. At 26, Mira had already learned that honesty was rare in the hegemony. Her instructors smiled politely, while ranking her species near the bottom of every endurance metric. Primitive deathworlders, they called humans, over-adapted to pain, under-equipped for reason. Commander Vile Takor had said as much that morning during advanced survival systems. The Threxian stood before the cadets like a sculpture carved from muscle and disdain. Discipline, not defiance, wins wars, he'd said. His voice was low and metallic, as if the air itself strained to carry it. The apex chamber killed 17 trained soldiers. It does not care about courage. Gravity does not reward emotion. It rewards design. He had paused, staring directly at Mira. And humans, he added, were never designed for survival. They simply refused to die quickly. That earned a few chuckles from the rows of multi-species cadets. Mira had smiled politely, the way one smiles at a child who thinks he's insulted you. Now, standing before the sealed chamber door, she whispered, "Let's see how poor the design really is." Her wrist console flickered as she ran the override. Earth engineers had taught her that any system, no matter how alien, could be tricked by curiosity and patience. The lock hissed once, then again, an old mechanism struggling to remember obedience. Lights crawled awake along the frame. Inside, the apex chamber looked like the hollow heart of a starship. Circular walls of black alloy, floor scarred with ancient test burns. Overhead rings of gravitic projectors dormant for decades. A faint metallic scent hung in the air, the residue of past failures. Mira stepped in. The door sealed behind her with a hydraulic sigh. "Computer," she said softly. "Activate gravity simulation protocol." The response came in a dead voice, one that hadn't been used since executions were public events. "Warning, calibration exceeds safe biological parameters." "Proceed?" "Proceed." The floor trembled as the generators powered on. Numbers climbed across her visor. 3G. Viog, Tengrun, 20 green. Her knees buckled, muscles tightening against the invisible weight pressing her downward. Every breath became labor. Every heartbeat felt like it was trying to punch through bone. At 30G, the average Threxian's bones would crack. At 40, even Vorex-grade armor collapsed into scrap. At 47G, the chamber turned heroes into stains. Mira reached 45G before the computer hesitated. Human vital signs deteriorating. Emergency cutoff recommended. "Override," she rasped. Sweat dripped down her neck like molten lead. Her lungs burned, her blood felt dense, but her smile widened. "Keep going," the chamber screamed. Metal groaned like something alive, and then stillness. Her body trembled, pinned by the weight of a planet. Each breath came short but steady. Muscles adapted, micro-adjusted, compensated. She focused on the rhythm. Inhale, hold, exhale, brace. The ancient human pattern for not dying. Begin. Set 1. She lowered herself to the floor. Push up. Each motion felt like lifting a mountain. Her shoulders shuddered, but the motion stayed clean. Her vision narrowed until the world became heartbeat and gravity. Outside, deep in the Academy's monitoring core, an automated alert blinked red. Alert unauthorized activation, apex chamber. Occupant human LT Mira Hale. Vitals active, anomalous. Third shift technician Varn clicked his mandibles, confused. "That's not possible," he muttered, paging Commander Vile. "Sir, we've got..." Activity. When Vile arrived, his eyes focused instantly on the feed. a glowing heat signature inside the chamber, moving. Not collapsing. Moving. How long has she been in there? 6 minutes, Varn said. Gravity reads full capacity. Vile leaned closer. The heat map showed a humanoid form lowering to the floor, then rising. Lowering again, repeating, she's exercising. Looks that way, sir. For a moment, Vile said nothing. The idea offended physics itself. Record everything. Seal the deck. No one enters until I authorize it. Inside the chamber, Mira's arms trembled violently. Her pulse hammered in her ears, but the pain had stabilized into clarity. Every nerve was awake. The chamber didn't hate her. It simply told the truth, that existence cost effort. Minutes passed. She stopped counting after 50 reps. Her suit's sensors chimed faintly. Heart rate stabilized. Oxygen saturation within tolerance. Mira laughed quietly. It sounded strange in the pressurized silence. When she finally spoke to the intercom, her voice was hoarse but steady. Note to self, she said. Gravity chamber, not lethal. Just honest. The system logged her words into the station archive. By morning, the story had already leaked through the Cadet networks. Someone swore they'd seen a human alive in the apex chamber. Someone else said it was propaganda. But Vile had the data. Hard, recorded, undeniable. He watched the playback twice before summoning his adjutant. Prepare the chamber for inspection, he ordered. Sir, it's still active. I know. Bring monitoring drones. And med teams. She'll be dead when we open it. She has to be. When the chamber finally depressurized, the door slid open with a hiss of heat and ozone. Mira stood in the center, drenched in sweat, breathing hard but smiling. The floor beneath her boots was cratered where she'd trained. Morning, Commander, she said. You were right about one thing. Vile's voice was flat. Which? Gravity rewards design. She straightened, bones creaking like steel under tension. Fortunately, evolution designs for stubbornness. He stared, speechless as she walked past him. Slow, deliberate steps that echoed through the corridor. Behind her, the chamber cooled, humming softly, as if waiting for her to return. The morning after the incident, Station Vorex 9 pulsed with rumor. Every cadet, technician, and officer had heard some version of the story, each more ridiculous than the last. A human had survived the apex chamber. A ghost had reawakened the machine. A malfunctioning hologram had fooled the sensors. Commander Vile Takor didn't entertain stories. He believed in numbers, yet the readings in front of him weren't numbers. They were insults. Heart rate 112 BPM. Oxygen saturation 97%. Core temperature normal. Status alive. He replayed the footage again, claws tapping the desk rhythmically. The human, Lieutenant Mira Hale, was on her knees drenched in sweat, performing what the database labeled push-ups. Each motion should have torn muscle from bone. Instead, she moved like a machine-learning joy. He rewound the footage, eyes narrowing. Every cycle of movement matched a precise rhythm. Counted breath, measured strain, deliberate control. No panic, no collapse. Only endurance refined into ritual. Vile's adjutant entered quietly. Sir, the board requests a formal statement. Tell them I'm verifying the data, Vale said. If it's true, then physics itself requires revision. The adjutant hesitated. Permission to speak freely, Commander? Granted. What if it isn't physics that's wrong? What if it's us? Vile didn't answer. He just kept watching the screen where Mira had broken the one law that held every species equal. The law of gravity. Mira's quarters were small, barely larger than a supply closet, but her body ached for space. Every muscle hummed with memory. Every joint throbbed with delayed protest. Yet beneath the soreness was something deeper. Satisfaction. Her skin still carried the phantom pressure of the chamber. Normal gravity felt deceitful, like walking on air. The door chimed. She didn't move. Lieutenant Hale, came Vale's voice. Open the door. She sighed and hit the panel. The door hissed open, revealing the commander's towering frame. His scales caught the corridor light, reflecting like shards of obsidian. You should be in the infirmary, he said. I was there, she replied. They ran tests, took blood, poked everything worth poking. Apparently I'm still human. That remains to be confirmed, Vale said dryly. You violated protocol, destroyed 3 security seals and nearly destabilized an entire deck. I stabilized it. He folded his arms. You could have died. I didn't. They stared at each other in silence. Mira's tone was matter of fact, but her eyes carried quiet defiance. Vael's mandibles tightened. Explain to me what you were thinking. She leaned against the wall. I wasn't thinking. I was testing. Testing what? Limits? Whose? Mine. Her simplicity infuriated him. He'd spent a lifetime mastering structure, precision, control, everything humans seemed to lack. Yet this woman had done what decades of engineering and research couldn't. She'd endured. He turned toward the door. You are confined to quarters until further notice. I will convene a disciplinary hearing at 0900 tomorrow. Do not leave this room. Mira saluted lazily. Understood, sir. He left without another word, but she caught the faintest tremor in his tale, an emotion Threxians rarely betrayed. Uncertainty. By midday, Vorex's central control hub was a storm of speculation. Technicians reviewed telemetry until their eyes bled data. The apex chamber's internal sensors confirmed every horrifying metric. Seismic readings showed her impact points on the floor. Heart monitors logged continuous stable performance. No hallucinations. No mechanical support. She was in there 43 minutes, said Chief Engineer Drav, disbelief thick in his tone. Even Threxian armor implodes after 15. Varn, the monitoring officer, shook his head. And she was doing exercises. Not even staying still. Vael entered, cutting their chatter instantly. Display the live chamber feed. The chamber stood empty now, lights dimmed. Yet a faint thermal residue still glowed where Mira's body had pressed against the floor. What about the field integrity? Vael asked. Drav checked the readings. Stable, no leaks. Gravity uniform throughout. It wasn't weaker when she entered, if that's what you're asking. Then the chamber worked perfectly, Vael said quietly. And she still survived. She didn't just survive, Varn muttered. She adapted. At 2200 hours, Vael's curiosity defeated his caution. He returned to the chamber alone. The air was still thick with ionized dust and the faint scent of burnt alloy. He approached the inner door, studying the floor's faint indentations. Every step Mira had taken left measurable impressions. He crouched, examining a handprint pressed into metal. Even under controlled heat, no unarmored being should have made a mark like that. He placed his own claw beside it. Her hand was smaller, fragile-looking, yet she had dented the surface. He straightened and looked up at the observation window. The empty chamber reflected his own reflection back, tall, composed, and suddenly unsure. Mira couldn't sleep. The chamber called to her from across the station like a low hum she couldn't tune out. She missed its pressure, the honesty of effort. Every instinct screamed to return. She sat at her small desk, rewatching the internal feed she'd secretly copied before Vael sealed it. The image of herself struggling under the crushing field didn't look human. It looked elemental. A knock interrupted her thoughts. The door slid open before she could respond. Drav slipped in, clutching a data pad. I shouldn't be here, he whispered. Commander would have my hide. What is it? She asked. I pulled your vitals from the medbay scan. He handed her the pad. You need to see this. She skimmed the data, brows lifting. Bone density 2.8x baseline human. Microtears in muscle tissue had already repaired within 6 hours. Mitochondrial output spiked beyond recorded norms. Drav rubbed his neck. Your body shouldn't be able to do this. You're changing. Adaptation, Mira said softly. That's not adaptation. That's metamorphosis, she smiled faintly. Same principle, different scale. He swallowed hard. If the hegemony gets wind of this, they'll dissect you for research. They'll try. Drav stared at her, equal parts admiration and fear. You plan to go back in, don't you? Yes, you're insane. I prefer consistent. The next morning, Vael entered the hearing chamber expecting defiance. What he found was silence. Mira sat calmly in the center, hands folded, face unreadable. Around her, a semicircle of officers glared down from their seats. Admiral Koresh, head of the Academy's board, opened the proceedings. Lieutenant Hale, you are charged with unauthorized access to restricted equipment, endangerment of station personnel, and destruction of property. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Yes, Mira said. The property isn't destroyed. It's improved. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Koresh's eyes narrowed. Explain. I proved the chamber's limits aren't physical, she said. They're psychological. You built a death trap and called it science. I turned it into a training ground. That is arrogance, Vial snapped. That's data, she replied evenly. Koresh studied her for a long moment. You survived where no one else did. That fact alone demands examination. Until further notice, you are confined to the station under observation. No disciplinary action. Yet Mira rose. Observation's fine, sir. Just make sure the cameras catch everything. The board dismissed her, but Vial lingered as she walked past. Why? He asked, voice low. Why risk everything for? This, she paused. Because gravity doesn't lie, Commander. Doesn't care about rank, politics, or species. It only asks one question. How much can you carry? I needed to find out. He watched her leave, the door sliding shut behind her. Vial looked again at the footage of her final seconds in the chamber. Sweat, blood, motion, then stillness, serenity. Not struggle. Mastery. And for the first time in his long military life, Commander Vale Tikor wasn't sure which side of evolution he was on. 3 days after the hearing, the apex chamber had become the beating heart of Station Vorex 9. The corridors around Dock Theta, once silent and ignored, now throbbed with the low hum of foot traffic and whispered disbelief. Word spread faster than containment protocols ever could. The human lived. Every species had come to see her. Engineers, cadets, biologists, soldiers, all pressing against the observation glass for a glimpse of the impossible. The chamber's black hull gleamed under floodlights as if aware of its new purpose. The Academy's deadliest relic had turned into a living demonstration. Inside, Lieutenant Mira Hale moved slowly, methodically, under gravity that should have ended her. Sensors confirmed it. 47 times standard, a field dense enough to crush a shuttle hull. Yet she was alive, deliberate and calm. Sweat hit the ground with audible splats, each drop as heavy as metal. Her muscles rippled under the compression field like coiled wire. Drav stood at the control console, voice tight with nerves. She's been at it for 52 minutes, Commander. Heart rate steady. No signs of collapse. Vial didn't look away from the screen. Increase observation drones. I want readings on cellular microstructure and skeletal resonance. You still think this is a trick? Dreve asked quietly. I think physics doesn't make exceptions, Vial said. And yet, he let the thought fade. On the monitor, Mira pushed herself upright, balancing on one arm, shifting weight with almost lazy precision. The observation deck fell silent. No one dared breathe. Then the human laughed, and a single, breathless chuckle. The sound carried through the comm speakers, warm and unbothered, as if she'd found amusement in something only she could feel. The first journalist arrived that afternoon, then the second. By the end of the week, there were 10. Alien correspondents setting up holo recorders, eager to broadcast the phenomenon. The Academy's administration tried to restrict access, but curiosity had already become commerce. Cadets sold entry passes to the best viewing hours. Vendors arrived with snacks and cheap merchandise. Gravity Defies You shirts, miniature chamber models, even holographic Mira figurines performing push-ups. When Vale confronted the station director, the old Torvin simply shrugged. If the human insists on training in there, we might as well get budget relief out of it. Oxygen costs aren't paying themselves. Vile's response was pure disgust, but he didn't argue. The spectacle had momentum now. He could only study it. By the second week, the audience numbered in the hundreds. Vorex 9's public broadcast channel streamed her sessions live, complete with commentary from science officers. The feed displayed readings alongside footage, heart rate, temperature, gravimetric density. Viewers argued across systems about whether she was augmented or suicidal. Mira ignored them all. Inside the chamber, her world narrowed to rhythm and pressure. The weight was constant, honest, familiar. Every motion demanded purpose. Every breath demanded proof. In there, she didn't have to explain herself. The gravity did the questioning for her. Sometimes she spoke aloud, not to anyone but to the silence that pressed against her bones. You don't ease up, do you? She muttered during one session. Good, neither do I. The microphones caught everything. The recording spread like wildfire. To some, her words sounded heroic. To others, insane. On the 12th day, Dr. Vesson of the Quolar Polytechnic arrived. an alien scholar whose translucent tendrils shimmered with shifting colors. She requested access to Vial's data logs. "Commander," she said, "your chamber has created the most significant biological anomaly in galactic history." "She created it herself," Vial replied. "Then she's rewriting the limits of biology in real time. I need to understand how." Vessen's analysis drones floated toward the glass, scanning Mira's every motion. "Look at her skeletal density. It's increasing. The stress isn't destroying her. It's forcing adaptive reinforcement." Drav frowned. "You're saying she's evolving inside the chamber?" "Not over generations," Vessen said. "Over days," Vial exhaled slowly. "That's impossible." Vessen's tendrils pulsed violet. So was surviving 47 gravities. Mira felt the stares even through the walls. The glass above her might as well have been 1,000 eyes. It didn't bother her. If anything, it made the challenge sharper. Let them watch. Let them see what earned strength looked like. She finished her set, stood, and looked toward the observation deck. "Enjoying the show?" she asked through the comm. The room froze. Vial stepped forward. "Lieutenant Hale, you've turned a restricted facility into a public circus." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Not my doing, Commander. People like seeing something real." "Real." His tone was acid. "You're endangering yourself. I'm improving myself. Improvement without purpose is vanity." She smiled faintly. "Then call me vain. It still works." The deck erupted in low murmurs. Even Vial felt the shift. The human wasn't just surviving, she was performing, and the galaxy adored performers. That evening, Vial found himself watching the recordings alone. He slowed the footage frame by frame. He couldn't ignore what the sensors showed. Her movements were growing smoother, faster, more efficient. Her oxygen use was dropping while her muscle output climbed. Drav entered quietly. "You've been here for hours." Vial didn't look up. "She's learning to use the weight." Drav blinked. "How do you mean?" "Every other species fights gravity like it's an enemy," Vial said. "She treats it like a partner. Watch her footing. She's not resisting the pull. She's channeling it." Drav studied the screen. "If that's true, she's adapting faster than any organism on record." Vial finally leaned back, eyes fixed on the image. "She's redefining adaptation." The next day, Vessen conducted a live scan through the chamber's glass. Her instruments hummed with data overload. Bone density up another 6%. Microvascular reinforcement observed in muscle tissue. Neural signals show enhanced synchronization between motor cortex and reflex pathways. "Commander, she's turning gravity into stimulus rather than strain." Vial crossed his arms. "What are the limits of this adaptation?" Vessen hesitated. "Unknown. If the process continues, she could withstand higher gravities than any known life form. But the psychological toll, she doesn't seem concerned," Vial said. The crowd pressed closer to the glass as Mira began a new routine, running this time, each step shaking the floor like a hammer strike. Her breathing echoed over the speakers, rhythmic and fierce. From somewhere in the audience, a cadet whispered, "She's not training. She's worshipping it." After the session, Vial initiated a private channel. "Lieutenant, explain this obsession." Mira sat cross-legged on the chamber floor, eyes half closed. "It's not obsession. It's clarity." "Clarify that." She opened her eyes, gaze steady. "Out there, everything's artificial. Simulations, politics, orders. In here, nothing lies. Gravity doesn't negotiate. You either stand or you don't. You think that's purpose? It's the closest I've found." Vial studied her expression through the monitor. There was no arrogance there, only conviction, pure and unyielding. When the channel closed, he remained still for a long moment. Somewhere deep inside, an emotion he hadn't felt in years flickered. Respect or maybe fear. By the end of the month, Station Vorex 9 had changed. Cafeteria screens broadcast her sessions during meals. Cadets quoted her lines as motivation. "Gravity doesn't lie" became a slogan printed on training walls. Vale hated it, and yet couldn't stop watching. The more she trained, the more human persistence infected the station like a virus of awe. During one late-night session, Vessen stood beside him at the window. "You realize what's happening, Commander?" "Yes," Vale said quietly. "We built a machine to crush defiance, and she's teaching it how to kneel." Mira finished her final rep, body trembling, skin glistening under the chamber lights. She looked up through the glass at hundreds of faces pressed close together. "Still think humans are fragile?" she asked. No one answered. Outside, the recording drones captured her steady breath, her calm defiance. Inside, gravity pressed down, relentless and perfect, and the humans smiled back at it. By the time the Hegemony's inspection shuttle docked with Vorex 9, the apex chamber was more myth than machinery. Crowds filled the observation decks daily. Merchants sold glow patches shaped like tiny humans lifting stars. The station's oxygen usage had tripled. But for Commander Vile Tekor, the numbers that mattered were simpler. 1 human. Human chamber, 47 gravities, and still no explanation. He stood in the command ring when the inspectors arrived. 3 officials in polished armor, bearing the cold efficiency of bureaucrats who'd never seen a battlefield. Their leader, Magistrate Dor, didn't waste time. "Commander," she said, "your report claims a Terran has survived exposure to a gravitational field of lethal magnitude." "Survived," Vile said evenly, "and adapted. Then we'll see for ourselves." They descended to Dock Theta where the crowd had already gathered. The chamber loomed ahead, humming softly like a living creature. Mira was inside, her body a silhouette under the compression field. Each movement drew ripples of light from the gravity projectors. Slow, graceful, controlled violence. The magistrate's second, an officer named Relth, sneered. "This is your miracle? A human lifting herself in circles? Hardly impressive." "She's doing that under 47 Gs, said Drav. Relth laughed. "Perhaps your instruments are miscalibrated." "They aren't," Mira's voice said through the intercom, dry as vacuum. Relth flinched. "She can hear us?" "She can hear everything," Vile replied. After the session, Mira stepped out, drenched in sweat, unbothered by the collective stare of the assembly. The magistrate approached, scanning her with a portable analyzer. "Baseline human physiology," she muttered. "No implants, no augmentations," Mira grinned. "Sorry to disappoint." "Lieutenant," Dor said sharply, "you've turned a classified facility into an entertainment venue. Explain yourself." "I didn't build the audience," Mira said. "I just didn't die." Relth's mandibles clicked in irritation. "You violated 23 hegemony safety codes." "Then add 24, Mira said. "I'm planning another run tonight." Dor frowned. "Another?" "I want to go higher." Vile's head snapped toward her. "Higher?" 50. The crowd erupted in noise. Some gasped, others cheered. "You'll destroy yourself," Vile said. "Maybe. Or maybe I'll learn something new." Relth barked a laugh. "If she wants to die, let her. The hegemony can't forbid suicide." But Dor wasn't amused. "Commander, authorize a full test. Document everything. If she perishes, the matter ends. If not," she paused, "we will determine the political consequences later." The chamber was prepared that evening under Vale's supervision. Technicians recalibrated the emitters, expanding the field range. Emergency drones lined the deck. The air felt heavy even before activation, as though the chamber was aware of what was coming. Vile stood by the control panel, claws flexing against the console. "You don't have to do this," he told her through the comm. Mira's voice came calm. "Of course I do. Why?" "Because you still think I shouldn't be able to." He hesitated, unable to deny it. "Then I need to prove it again," she said. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. On the observation deck, scientists whispered readings. Dor leaned forward, eyes fixed on the monitors. The field ignited with a thunderclap of force. 30 groaned. 40 grum. 40. The metal floor screamed under the load. Mira sank to one knee, both hands braced against the surface. Every muscle tremored. Sweat flashed into vapor. The sensors wailed. 49, Drav said, voice tight. "She's reaching threshold." "Hold," Vile ordered. Mira's breathing came through the speakers, harsh but steady. "More." 50, Drav said, the hum deepened into a growl. Gravity crushed the air itself. Mira's arms locked as she fought to stand. The veins along her neck pulsed like cables. "Vitals unstable," a medic shouted. Vale's hand hovered over the abort switch. "Enough." Her voice cut through the static. "Don't, I'm still here," the crowd froze. Her silhouette straightened. Inch by inch she rose, first to her knees, then to her feet. 50 gravities. Standing, Door whispered, "Impossible." "Recorded," Vale said. Mira took one step. The floor dented, another. Then she laughed, short, ragged, but triumphant. "Feels heavier," she said. "I like it." The chamber lights flickered. Power draws spiked across the station. Drav's console screamed alarms. "Field instability. Core's overheating." "Shut it down." Vielle roared. "No!" Mira gasped. "I can push?" Her words broke into a grunt as the chamber flared white. The gravity collapsed in a shockwave that knocked spectators off their feet. When the emergency lights returned, the field was gone. Smoke coiled from the vents. The door hissed open. Mira stumbled out, blood at her nose, breathing like she'd run a marathon through a star. Vielle caught her before she hit the ground. "Idiot," he muttered. She smiled weakly. "50's rougher than I thought." Hours later, the station's medbay was silent except for the hum of monitors. Mira lay on a diagnostic table, eyes half open. Vesson hovered nearby, analyzing her scans. "She should be in shock," the scientist said softly. "Instead, her vitals are stabilizing. Her bones have microfractures but are healing faster than before." Vielle folded his arms. "She survived 50 gravities. What's next, 70? Vesson looked up, expression unreadable. She could reach it eventually. Vielle stared at Mira through the glass partition. "Eventually she'll break." Vesson's voice was almost reverent. "Maybe that's what she's waiting for." When Mira woke, the room was dim. Phil sat across from her, silent. "How bad?" she asked, bruised, fractured, dehydrated, and alive. She smiled faintly. "So a good day." He leaned forward. "You pushed beyond the chamber's limit. You could have destroyed the entire deck. I wanted to see what 50 felt like. You call that curiosity. I call it madness. Maybe they're the same thing," she said quietly. Vielle hesitated. "Why do you keep chasing this?" Mira looked at her hands. "When you grow up on Earth, gravity is the first teacher. You fall before you walk. You bleed before you balance. It never lets you forget what you are. Something that struggles upward. Maybe I'm just listening to it again." Her honesty disarmed him. There was no arrogance, no need for glory, only conviction. He stood, voice low. "They'll want another demonstration. This time, not a test. A show." "Let them watch," she said. "Maybe they'll learn something." 2 days later, the hegemony declared an official trial. A live broadcast across the Allied sectors. 3 elite cadets volunteered to enter the chamber with her, armed with advanced grav-resistant exosuits. The experiment would prove once and for all whether the human was anomaly or legend. Doc Theta filled to capacity. Hollow screens hung from the ceilings. The crowd's collective breath felt like weather. Inside the chamber, the 3 armored cadets took position beside Mira. Vielle's voice came through the speaker. "Field activation in 5 seconds. Stay alert. Try to keep up," Mira said lightly. The countdown hit 0. Gravity slammed down. The exosuits buckled instantly. The cadets collapsed, limbs jerking under the crushing field. Their armor alarms wailed in overlapping tones. Mira moved. Slowly, deliberately, she lifted each one, dragging them toward the door. Metal screamed as she fought the pull. One step, then another, every motion carving dents into the floor. She reached the threshold, shoved them out, and turned back toward the chamber. "Deactivate field," Vielle ordered. "No," Door said softly, eyes wide. "Let her finish." Mira stood in the center again, shoulders heaving, staring upward through the observation glass. "This is what it feels like to earn your strength," she said, voice trembling but proud. Then she raised her hand, palm open, as if greeting the weight itself. When the gravity field finally shut down, the station erupted in stunned applause. Vielle didn't move. He just watched her through the smoke, realization dawning slow and deep. The chamber, built to test the limits of endurance, had instead revealed the truth of humanity. They didn't conquer physics. They negotiated with it and refused to quit. The apex chamber should have been sealed after the incident. Every regulation, every risk protocol demanded it. Instead, the chamber doors stayed open, humming with quiet defiance. Mira Hale had turned the most lethal experiment in the hegemony's history into a personal challenge. 2 weeks had passed since the 50G trial. The footage of her dragging armored cadets to safety had already crossed 10 sectors. News feeds replayed it endlessly. The human standing upright in a place where physics said no one should stand at all. Commander Vial Takor watched the playback one final time, then shut it off. He'd seen enough. The impossible had become routine. And routine, he knew, bred escalation. The door to his office slid open. Dr. Vesson entered, eyes alight with the feverish gleam of discovery. Her bone densities tripled since last scan, she said. Her cardiovascular output's 40% above baseline. I'm not observing recovery anymore. I'm observing adaptation. Vial's mandibles clicked. You mean she's preparing? For what? He turned toward the viewport where the neutron star's pale light pulsed like a heartbeat. For whatever comes next. She won't stop. Mira's reflection in the chamber glass startled even her. The lean cadet who had stepped into the apex weeks ago was gone. Her body looked carved, functional, stripped of softness. She could feel her heartbeat like a drum behind her ribs. The higher gravity had reshaped her. Not grotesquely, but unmistakably. She flexed her hands, testing the new steadiness in her bones. Each motion carried an awareness of weight, as if the air itself had learned resistance. Drav approached from the access corridor, carrying a datapad. You've become a religion, you know that? Mira smiled faintly. That sounds unhealthy. Every cadet on this station quotes you. Gravity doesn't lie. Weight is truth. Even Vial stopped correcting them. She raised an eyebrow. That can't be right. Drav hesitated. He's changed too, watches your sessions like scripture. Mira looked at the chamber's core. He understands what this is about. Enlighten me. It's not strength, she said. It's honesty. You can't fake effort in here. You either meet the weight or break beneath it. Drav exhaled, studying her. And now you want more. 70, she said simply. His eyes widened. That's suicide. Maybe. Maybe not. But it's the next question. When Vial received her request, he didn't respond for an hour. He paced the length of his office, torn between duty and the quiet, treacherous admiration he felt for her defiance. Finally, he keyed the comm. Lieutenant Hale, he said, her voice came back steady. Commander, 70 is beyond endurance, you know that. So was 50. He paused. Why push further? Because the limit's still talking, she said softly. And I'm not done listening. There was no arrogance in her tone, only certainty. Vial ended the channel, stood there a long time, and finally whispered, Then may gravity forgive us both. Preparation for the 70G test took 3 days. Engineers reinforced the floor plating and installed redundant dampeners to keep the field from collapsing. Vesson calibrated the medical telemetry until it could read a heartbeat through planetary interference. The station's population doubled overnight. Shuttles arrived carrying diplomats, soldiers, and thrill-seekers. Doc Theta became a carnival orbiting a crucible. Mira spent the final night alone inside the darkened chamber. She lay on the floor, eyes closed, feeling the hum of dormant gravity beneath her palms. It was alive in its own way, patient, unfeeling, waiting to test her honesty again. When the door opened, Vial stepped in. For once, his armor wasn't polished. You're certain? He asked quietly. She nodded. You wouldn't have asked if you didn't already know the answer. He regarded her for a long moment. When this is over, the hegemony will either worship you or erase you. I'm not here for either, she said. I just want to see where the line finally stops. He almost smiled. You sound like a Threxian soldier. Or maybe you sound a little human, she said. The next morning, the chamber came alive. Energy arcs rippled through the generator rings as the countdown began. The decks above were packed beyond capacity. Even distant stations patched into the live feed. Vial stood at the control console, claws resting beside the abort switch. Field initialization, Drav called. 30 gravities and climbing. Inside, Mira dropped into a low stance, grounding her feet. The pressure wrapped around her like an embrace made of stone. 40. Her bones thrummed with vibration. Breath became effort. Sweat rolled from her hairline, hitting the floor like sparks. 55. The audience murmured as the visual feed began to distort. Light bending under the field. Vale's voice cut through the noise. Lieutenant, report. Mira's answer came thin but audible. Still here. 60. Every alarm screamed at once. The field clawed at reality itself. The chamber's metal groaned under the strain. Mira's vision blurred to red and white. Each heartbeat sounded like a cannon inside her chest. But through it all, she smiled. Higher. 65, Drav shouted. Core at 90% load. 70 will break containment, Vesson yelled. Vial hesitated only a breath. Maintain output, Commander. Do it. The numbers climbed. 66, 68, 70. The lights exploded in a halo of gold. Gravity hit like a god descending. Mira's body flattened for a second, her spine bending toward the floor. Blood burst from her nose and ears. Then, impossibly, she moved. One hand pressing down, forcing her torso upright. The cameras zoomed in, capturing a sight that stopped an entire galaxy mid-sentence. She was standing. Her voice came through the comm, ragged but exultant. Now it's honest. The crowd fell silent. The hum of the chamber grew into a low, resonant roar. The instruments couldn't keep up. Data streams devolved into static. Mira, Vial shouted. You've proven it. End the test. She shook her head slowly, barely able to lift her arm. Not yet. The chamber shuddered. Magnetic locks screamed as containment fields overloaded. Sparks erupted across the walls. Shut it down, Drav bellowed. Vial slammed the emergency override. The lights cut out, plunging Doc Theta into darkness. The sound of collapsing gravity filled the station, a deep sinking tone that rattled bones and instruments alike. When the field finally fell silent, smoke curled through the vents. The door groaned open. Mira collapsed forward, landing on her hands and knees. Steam rose from her skin. Vial was already there, catching her before she fell. You fool, he whispered. Her head lolled against his shoulder, voice barely audible. You saw it, didn't you? He swallowed hard. Yes. Then it was worth it. In the hours that followed, chaos turned to reverence. Vesson's scans defied logic. Mira's physiology was unrecognizable. Skeletal density nearing alloy composition. Cardiac rhythm perfectly steady despite trauma. Neural adaptation off every scale. Reporters flooded the station. Soldiers requested permission to train under reduced gravity fields. The hegemony sent encrypted orders to seize all research. And through it all, Vial sat outside the med bay staring at his hands, wondering when respect had turned into awe. Drav approached quietly. She'll live, Vale nodded slowly. Of course she will. She shouldn't. She's human, Vial said. They never learned when to stop. Through the glass, Mira lay beneath a halo of medical light, breathing steady, lips curled into the faintest smile. Outside the viewport, the neutron star pulsed again, a slow, rhythmic heartbeat echoing her own. Vial watched it in silence, understanding for the first time that she hadn't conquered gravity at all. She'd taught it to recognize her. The apex chamber was silent for the first time in months. Its black walls, once vibrating with lethal energy, now rested cold and still. The crowds were gone, the lights dimmed, and the air carried the faint metallic tang of something that had both ended and begun. Mira Hale opened her eyes in the med bay and knew, immediately, that something was wrong. The room felt wrong. Too light. Her body floated against the bedding as if her bones had turned hollow. Every motion felt exaggerated, uncontrolled, like moving underwater in reverse. She sat up slowly. What's the gravity in here? A nurse looked startled. Standard, Lieutenant. 1G. Mira's stomach turned. Feels like free fall. The door slid open. Commander Vial entered, his presence dark against the sterile white. His posture was rigid, but his eyes betrayed relief. You're awake. Barely, she said. Feels like the floor forgot how to hold me. You've been unconscious for 3 days, he said. Your body isn't adjusting well to normal conditions. No kidding. She swung her legs over the bed, almost overbalancing. Everything's too easy. Like I'm cheating. Doctors call it gravitational dissociation, Vial said. Your muscles and inner ear are recalibrated for 70 gravities. To you, this must feel like weightlessness. She tried to stand. Her balance wobbled. I hate it. You'll adapt, he said quietly. She shook her head. That's the problem, Commander. I don't want to. Outside, the galaxy had already moved on. The hegemony declared the Apex project classified. All data confiscated. The official report labeled the event an anomalous human incident. No medals. No ceremony. Only containment, but news traveled faster than bureaucracy. Across the frontier colonies, humans whispered her name like a myth. The woman who stood under 70 gravities. Soldiers quoted her during training. Miners on high-density worlds painted her face on hull walls. To some, she was proof. To others, a warning. Vale watched the storm build from his command office. Every channel showed debates about human potential. Scientists called it evolutionary acceleration. Priests called it sacrilege. Economists called it opportunity. He called it inevitable. When he visited her again, she was sitting cross-legged on the medbay floor, hands clenched, breathing slow and measured, forcing herself to feel resistance that wasn't there. You'll tear your muscles doing that, he said. They've already torn, she replied. Now I'm just reminding them what it's supposed to feel like. He studied her quietly. The chamber will be dismantled in 2 weeks. The hegemony ordered its destruction. Too much attention, she looked up sharply. They're tearing it down? Yes, she rose unsteadily, using the bed for support. When? Demolition starts on the first of the next cycle. You're not expected to attend. Her gaze hardened. I'll be there. 2 days later, the crews arrived, drones and engineers in hazard suits. They worked methodically, sealing cables, removing emitters, stripping the chamber like vultures picking at the bones of a legend. Mira stood at the observation window, pale but steady. Vial joined her, silent. They're dismantling it like it's a broken engine, she said. It is a broken engine. No, she murmured. It's a mirror. Showed everyone exactly what they are when the weight's real. Vial glanced at her. You can't live inside a mirror forever. Maybe, but you can build another. Her tone made him pause. You're planning something. She didn't answer. That evening, she requested her personal accounts, her saved wages, and every credit transferred from the viewing broadcasts that had made her infamous. The sum was staggering, more than most officers would earn in a lifetime. When the clerk asked for a purpose code, she smiled faintly. Property acquisition. On the morning of demolition, Dock Theta was sealed for safety. Officials gathered for the formal shutdown. Vial, Dor, Vesson, and a dozen others who'd watched the human rewrite the laws of endurance. The chief engineer keyed in the override. Generator cycling down. But before the process began, a voice echoed across the deck. Hold that. Mira stepped forward, dressed in plain black fatigues, a datapad in hand. You can't dismantle private property, Dor frowned. Excuse me? I purchased the chamber yesterday, Mira said calmly, holding up the transfer documents. Registered under Terran colonial law. Paid in full? Vial's eyes widened. You bought it? Yes, which means it's no longer hegemony property. The engineer looked between them uncertainly. Orders, Magistrate? Dor's mandibles clicked. This is a legal manipulation. It's a lawful transaction, Mira replied. You built a monument to destruction. I'm converting it into something useful. Vesson stepped forward, cautious. What exactly do you intend? Mira looked at the massive chamber behind the glass, its lights dimmed but waiting. To open it. Dor's tone turned sharp. To what end? For training, Mira said. For anyone who wants to remember what it means to fight gravity instead of bureaucracy. Vial exhaled softly. You're making a gym, her lips curved. The honest kind. Weeks passed. The station's reconstruction halted, replaced by something unexpected. Workers reinstalled the emitters, recalibrated fields to adjustable gradients. The words Apex Chamber were replaced with a new sign, the Gravity Gym. The first day it opened, 3 humans stood waiting outside, 2 veterans and a teenager from a mining colony. Mira met them personally. You've read the waiver? She asked. The youngest nodded nervously. It says I could die, she smiled. That's the honest part. Inside, the hum of the generators returned, low and steady. She lowered the gravity to a manageable threshold. 15 Gs to start. The recruit staggered, knees buckling, but none fell. Breathe, she said. Don't fight it. Listen to it, they tried again. One managed a step, another a half squat. The third laughed through the pain. Mira's voice softened. Good, that's the sound of real work. Outside the viewing deck, Vial watched silently. His posture was rigid, but there was no anger left, only a strange pride. She turned a death trap into a cathedral, Drav said beside him. Vial nodded, and she made the universe her preacher. That evening, Mira stood alone in the chamber again. The lights dimmed to a warm gold. Gravity set low enough that she could move easily but still feel its weight. Her palms rested on the floor. She whispered, You and I aren't done yet. Vial's voice came from behind her. Will you ever stop chasing it? She looked back, smiling faintly. Would you, if you'd finally found something honest? He tilted his head. What if one day the gravity wins? She met his gaze. Then it earned it. He said nothing more. Outside, the neutron star burned faintly against the black, an impossible weight suspended in infinite emptiness. And below it, on a forgotten station orbiting nowhere important, one human taught others how to defy the universe by respecting it. The crowd outside the glass watched in awe as the first session ended. The recruits staggered out drenched in sweat, faces glowing with the strange euphoria of survival. Mira stepped out last, towel over her shoulders, breathing steady. One of the onlookers whispered, Is that the woman who survived 70 Gs? She smiled at the question, not denying it, not confirming it. Doesn't matter, she said. The point isn't what I survived. It's what comes next. As she walked past, the sign above the chamber flickered with new light. The gravity gym. Train hard. Stay human. Vial watched from the upper deck, expression unreadable. He understood now what she had built. Not rebellion, not vanity. A reminder. In a galaxy drowning in comfort, one woman had rebuilt the concept of effort. And as the station lights dimmed, the hum of the chamber returned, and steady, deep, and alive. The heartbeat of a species that refused to stop rising.